Okay, hi everybody. Good evening. Hope everybody's doing good. Right. So how are things in your school? Things are going good in school?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so September 1st, you're all going to the school back. I heard it's for 11th
Yeah.
and 12th, right? Okay, nice. So after a long
In
time,
our
you'll be
school, we
meeting.
have from 11th to, 9th to 12th.
Oh, 9th to 12th. Okay. Fine. Anyway, so you'll be meeting your friends after a long time. I don't know, maybe years, maybe more than a year, right? Yeah, it'll be definitely a good feeling to meet all of them. But yeah, you should be careful, maintain all the measures which the government tells you, the school tells you. Please make sure that you follow all the protocols, right, when you go to school. Okay, so how many of we? How many we have? We have 11. That is excluding me, and it's an academy. It is 9. Let me wait for 2 more minutes. We'll see whether people join. And guys, today you know that you have a 2 hours class, correct? Do you know that?
We didn't get
It's
any information regarding
Yes, sir, we don't know.
Oh my God. Okay. So it was supposed to be a 2 hours of class, 15 minutes break in between. If it is not able to you, say what can be done? You want to have a 2 hours class or you want to finish up with 1.5 hours itself?
weekends or anything is fine.
Yes,
Is
sir,
every,
it's fine.
is everybody okay with it? We can continue, like say now 6 o'clock, I'll give you a break, 15 minutes. And then again till 7:15, the class will go. Well, is this fine for everybody? 2 people said yes. I just want to know what others feel. Others are feeling.
Sir, but then I have another class at 6:30.
6:30 you have another class. Okay. Anybody
Sir, I
else?
have also another class at 6:30.
Okay. When will Epsilon offline classes start? Okay, that is a question which I think it most probably by, I don't know, September end or say September mid, possibilities are there. But I think the better person to answer this question will be Raghav sir. Okay, so because he takes the decision, right? So you just talk to him, but most probably, like if the school is opening, obviously there are chances that offline classes can start here also, right? But yeah, better person would be Raghav sir to ask, or Akila ma'am if you have the contact. Okay. Right. So I think we have enough people now. I think we'll start. Let me share my screen. So the class is okay. That we have to decide. So the class will be till only 6:30 then. Okay. So some of you say that we have class. Fine. So maybe we'll have the class only till 6:30. Okay. Right. Fine. Let me share my screen. Okay, right. So this is today being 28/08 left. Okay, right. So we have been seeing chemical bonding, if you can remember, people, right? So we started with why a chemical bond, how a chemical bond forms, right? Depending on how a chemical bond forms, obviously depends on what kind of bond is getting formed, obviously, right? So then we went on to see what the type of bonds. I have 2 types of bonds in chemistry. One is what is called as primary, the other one is what is called as secondary, right? And then we saw what is the basic difference between primary and secondary. It's all about whether the electronic configuration is undergoing a permanent change or not. If it is a permanent change, primary. If it is not a permanent change, say a temporary change or partial rearrangement, we call it, then it is going to be secondary. Right. So under your primary only, all the normal bonds you already know: ionic bond, covalent bond, coordinate bond, all these things come into the picture. Right. So first we went on to see ionic bonds, right? How an ionic bond is formed, what are the favorable conditions for an ionic bond to be getting formed, right? And then we went on to see what are the properties if I have an ionic compound or ionic bond, what are the general properties they'll have? Say, for example, they have high melting point, boiling point, they'll be highly soluble in water, high lattice energy, right? Say all these things we saw. And then since the next topic was supposed to come at the last, but since you asked the question that, say, if I give you 2 compounds, right, which is more ionic, right? Those kind of questions someone asked me. So we had to see how covalent nature exists in ionic compounds, right? So hope you all remember. I think I can show you that slide. I think that'll be better. Right, let me check. Where is it? Is this one? No, not this. Mhm. No, I'm not able to find it, but still, hope you all remember what I'm talking about, right? So I'm talking about this, right? I'm talking about covalent nature in ionic compounds, right? So now we understood how this covalent nature can first of all exist in ionic compounds. We went to the process or phenomenon called as polarization. Hope you all remember, right? Polarization is the distortion of electron cloud because of the presence of cation to the electrons of the anion, to the electron cloud of anion. Anion's electron cloud is going to get distorted. So it's like the electron of the anion comes near the cation, so it is as if it is getting shared. Not a fully covalent nature, but still we can consider it because it is getting like it is almost as if the electron is getting shared between the cation and anion. So more polarization, more covalent character, and then we went on to see if at all, depending on the cation, if it changes, how we call it, because the term we use there is polarizing power, the ability of the cation to polarize the anion, right? And then we saw like how it varies with size, the charge, and more polarizing power, more covalent character. Then for anions, we saw there we call it as polarizability, ability to get polarized for anions. So there again, we saw how charge and size plays a role in deciding the polarizing power, polarizability, right? And then we went on to see some examples. Okay, this compound is more ionic, this compound is less ionic, right? So that is where the ionic bonds end, right? Then we went on to see about covalent bonds, right? So we saw covalent bonds. We started to understand how exactly a covalent bond is formed, right? Say there'll be two. Say for example, hydrogen molecule is going to get formed. Say hydrogen, two hydrogens are there. I told you that initially they'll be isolated. We saw even this graph. If you can remember, the graph was something like this, right? Say in this place, like this is isolated, right? Now there are as the distance, this was the distance r0, and this was my potential energy, right? So now the atoms come closer and closer and closer, right? So now there'll be a point at which I'm going to have minimum energy. This is where I have minimum energy, right? So now if these two are going to come closer and closer, still more closer, then the repulsion will dominate. The repulsion between the electron of this and the electron of this, and say the nucleus of this and the nucleus of this will suffer repulsion when they're very close by, right? So we say that repulsion will be there. Again, the potential energy will increase. So now this is the point we're interested in, right? We said that this is the point where I have minimum energy. So this is the point where I say a bond is formed, like a covalent bond is formed, right? So because minimum energy means maximum stability. I already told you stability and energy are inversely related, right? And obviously whatever is the distance which is here at the minimum energy, that is what is called as bond length. We saw that, right? So between these two, there'll be some minimum distance so that the repulsion is not going to dominate. That is what is my bond length, right? So this is all we saw. So we understood how exactly a covalent bond is getting formed now, right? It's just the electrons and the nucleus of the say electron of one atom and the nucleus of the other atom is going to have attractive force. Thereby they become more stable, right? Fine. So now since we understood how a covalent bond is formed and all, right? Then we went on to see what are the, like say, how do we understand a covalent bond? Say, what are the properties of a covalent bond, right? Or say, what are the insights into the covalent bond? The structure, how how many electrons are required for a particular bond? How many, all those things, right? So in regarding that note, we went on to see this first scientist who spoke about this covalent compounds or covalent bond, that was Lewis, right? So you have to remember that it is purely based on octet or duplet rule, right? It was purely based on octet or duplet rule. right? So then we went on to see this Lewis dot structures, how to draw them, how the electrons are getting shared, right? Say depending on the number of electrons shared, how many covalent bonds. Say if you have one electron pair shared, one bond, two electrons means two bonds, and two pairs means two bonds, third pair means three bonds will be there. Maximum three bonds are only possible. Okay, why not see, you will see C triple bond C, C double bond C, but you will never see four bonds, not only between carbon, for any two elements for that matter, right? You cannot see four bonds, right? So we'll try to understand why is it like this. Okay, when we move on further, why is it that four bonds cannot be found? Maximum only possibility is three. Anyways, we'll try to understand. Anyways, so then we went on to see this Lewis dot structures. Based on the Lewis dot structures, we understood there is something called as bond pairs, BP, and there is something called as lone pairs. We understood what are lone pairs, right? And how do we write them? How do we write the structures along with the lone? For example, if it is N2 molecule, I write it like this, right? That means out of the valence electrons, there are 5 valence electrons in each of the nitrogen. Say this nitrogen requires 3 more electrons, this nitrogen requires 3 more electrons. So 3 electrons are shared. So triple bond is there. But out of the 5 electrons, only 3 are involving in bonding, right? So the other 2 electrons are there in the valence shell, but not involved in bonding. Those kind of electrons are what are called as lone pairs, right? So we understood, we saw different structures have different number of lone pairs on these molecules, right? Fine. So this all is okay. So he was able to explain how many bonds, all that, lone pairs, bond pairs, everything was able to octet rule, stability. Yes, all these things you were able to tell. But the main problem we saw, there are compounds which doesn't follow octet rule and still are stable. Still the compound exists, right? I can have more than 8 electrons in the valence shell. If you can remember the examples, SF6, PCl5, all these things. In this case, I have 12 electrons. Sulfur has 12 electrons. In this case, phosphorus will have 10 electrons in the valence shell if you count, right? Say octet is not getting satisfied, but still the compound exists. This was not able to explain by Lewis, right? Then there were compounds where which are having less than 8 electrons in the valence shell. For example, I gave you 2 things: beryllium, BeCl2 and BF3, boron trifluoride and beryllium chloride, right? So in this case, you will see that beryllium had only 4 electrons, boron had only 5 electrons in the valence shell, right? So these kind of problems, again, they were, lesser than 8 electrons, but still are stable. I cannot explain, right? The other problems we encounter with Lewis theory would be the strength of the bonds, right? Certain bonds are stronger, certain bonds are weaker. How, right? All these things are not explained. The geometry of the molecule, basically geometry means shape of the molecule. How one particular molecule looks. What is the structure of the molecule? Those things are not explained, right? So based on so many factors, we went on to see the next theory, that is your valence bond theory. Right? It's in short, it's called VB theory. Right. So I told you valence bond theory was actually evolved into this theory called as theory of hybridization. Right. So basically, but in your book, valence bond theory is theory of hybridization. That is what they were told, but it's not exactly true. History doesn't go that way. Right. Valence bond theory had some other statement, but just to overcome little shortcomings of that, they just version 2.0 of valence bond theory is what is my theory of hybridization. Okay, right. So we went on to see the statement of what valence bond theory says. If can anybody tell me what is the statement of valence bond theory, or what is the point behind it? I gave you a definition, right, for valence bond theory. Can someone state it? Yes, are you there? Anybody? Am I talking to myself? No, right?
No, sir.
Guys, are you there? Hello?
Yes, sir, we are there.
Okay, so why so much reluctance? Anyways, so anybody can tell me what is the statement for valence bond theory? What was the statement I gave you? Nobody
Can you
remembers.
give it again?
Well, I'm asking valence bond theory. I told a statement, right? there was a statement regarding valence bond theory which I gave you, asked you to take it down in your notebooks. I don't know whether some of you took it or not. Can somebody state it, what I told? So if you're not able to say the definition, that means you guys are not taking notes. That is what I understand, right? Can I conclude that point? You are not taking notes, correct, people? Can I get a yes? No? Yes, sir.
We are taking notes, sir.
Sir, I am
Ah.
taking.
Then you must be able to say, right, valence bond theory. What is the statement which I gave? If you have taken notes. Yes, what happened? It should be there in your notes. If you have taken this down, I specifically took some time to dictate the statement. Okay, fine. So if not, you can take it down again. If you didn't take it down yesterday or like last class, right? You can take it down now. Please state on the statement, people, everybody. Valence bond theory statement, what it says. Important, obviously. Like even though it is not going to be asked as such in the examination, but if you want to understand what exactly theory says, if you want to really appreciate it, yes, you have to know the statement properly. Please go on. Please take on the statement, people. For a covalent bond to be formed, the unpaired electrons in the valence shell, in each of the bonding atoms, should come together and gets paired. Okay, I'll repeat the statement, people. Right. So for a covalent bond to be formed, the unpaired electrons in the valence shell of each of the bonding atom should come together and get paired. As simple as that. Okay. So if you just read through the statement, I already discussed this, but again we are discussing, right? So now, for example, say I take H2 molecule, right? Say in each of this I have 2 hydrogen atoms, and you understand that both of them are having a configuration of 1s1. Okay, I write it like this, right? These 2 are unpaired electrons now. Now, what valence bond theory says, for a bond to be formed, for these 2 hydrogens to form a bond, right? Now, these 2 unpaired electrons which are there in the valence shell, or in this case, valence shell is 1s, or first shell, right? The first shell electrons, in this case, the valence shell, should come together and get paired, and that's how a covalent bond is getting formed. That is what it says. Okay, now what we have to understand is, as many as unpaired electrons I have, in this case, you see 2 unpaired electrons are there, right? I can make 1 pair out of it, so 1 covalent bond. If there are, say, 4 unpaired electrons totally, right, then I can, or I can just include one, look at it into only 1 atom. Well, that particular atom has how many unpaired electrons? That many bond you can form, right? Say, you can take another example. You can check this point. Say O2 you take, right? I know O2 forms a double bond, right? Okay. Now you can easily understand each of the oxygen atom will be having, say, 1s2, 2s2, 2p4, right? Here also say 2s2, 2p4. This would have been the configuration, right? Say now 2s, it's already paired. You understand this is 2s. In 2p, I have 4 electrons. Here is 1 electron, 4 electrons. Here also say 2s is paired. In 2p, I have 4 electrons. Okay. Now all you have to do is just look into the unpaired electrons in the valence shell. In the valence shell, right? How many unpaired electrons I have? In this case, I have 1, 2. Each of the oxygen atoms, right? Say now this and this will come together make one bond, gets paired, and the other one again will come together and gets paired, make another bond. So that's why you have O double bond. Okay, I hope everyone is able to get it, right? The unpaired electrons are going to be there in the valence shell. They will come together and gets paired, and that's how a covalent bond is formed. That's what valence bond theory says. Okay, right? So now obviously you will have lone pairs present, right? You will have 2 lone pairs each on each of the oxygen atoms, right? Anyways, so that we understood. Okay, so this is how valence bond theory works, right? The unpaired electrons in the valence shell. Yeah, tell me.
So then C2 does not exist.
Correct. That's what we saw this point also. This particular thing, what we said, the number of how many unpaired electrons you have, that many covalent bonds will not work for everything. For mostly, if you want to check it, you will check for any carbon compound, anything which contains carbon, this particular thing will not work. Right? So we'll take the simplest of the compound, which is CH4. Right? So now we'll try to understand whether, I mean, what is wrong with this molecule with respect to valence bond theory. This molecule exists, obviously, right? We know that it exists, methane exists, right? But valence bond theory will not be able to explain the existence of methane, I mean CH4. We'll try to understand how, right? So carbon will have a configuration of 1s2, 2s2, 2p2, 6 atomic number, right? Say 2s, the electrons are paired. In 2p, 2 electrons are there. Right. So what I understand is you have 2 unpaired electrons only, right? That means carbon can have only 2 bonds. Anything, say I can have something like this, CH, right? Only 2 bonds, only 2 electrons can involve in bonding from carbon, right? Or I can have, say, C double bond C. This I say basically C2, right? Say those kind of things should exist. Right, but in reality, we see that this kind of things, I will say these exist, but these are very unstable. Right, C2 actually exists, but not in this form, in some other form. Right, say they are very unstable. Basically, I cannot consider them as compounds. I would say during the chemical reaction, there might be, say, intermediates. Like we study about these things more when we go to organic chemistry. Okay, so now what you have to understand is there are only 2 unpaired electrons. So according to valence bond theory, only 2 bonds carbon can have, right? But we are seeing here that carbon has 4 bonds, 4 CH bonds are there, right? So now this was the main problem. Okay, so to overcome this particular problem, only theory of hybridization came, right? They just, everything is same, right? Everything, whatever said in valence bond theory is same, but little modification they did. They went on to see the theory of hybridization, right? Okay, so what you have to understand is, people, the unpaired electrons which are there, whatever be the number of unpaired electrons, okay, now what you have to understand is these 2 orbitals, what I understand, for example, in hydrogen, for example, like in H2 molecule, right, what I understand is there is going to be s orbital, one s orbital, again one s orbital. Now they are going to come together. Right, now they are going to come together to make a structure like this, because this had 1 electron and this had 1 electron, right? Now how do they become paired? Obviously they have to come closer to become paired, is it not? If obviously they're far away from each other, there is no concept of pairing, right? For them to pair, for these 2 unpaired electrons to get paired, the orbitals have to come closer. Okay, right? So obviously then only I can pair the electrons. Okay,
Sir,
so now this is the, yeah, please tell me.
Sir, the electron should be of opposite spin, right, in 1s.
Yeah, obviously. So what happens is that, okay, it's better way to write like this. Yes, correct. Opposite spin. Okay, but it's understood. Once, even if I write, once the electron comes near this particular electron, there is something called as an electron flip, or there's something called as spin flip. This will naturally happen, even though I write it like this only, like, or however I wrote. Once the electron comes closer, these 2 comes closer, one of them will flip, the spin will flip, and then they will get paired. This will happen, obviously. Okay, right. So we understood that they have to come closer, and see, what I have to understand is these 2 are individual atomic orbitals. Is it not? For that particular atom, I have some orbitals present. right? But once they come together, form the H2 molecule, I cannot call them as atomic orbitals anymore. No, I cannot call them like, because this is not an atom anymore. This is a molecule now, right? So initially I had the atomic orbitals. These atomic orbitals came closer and say formed something, not an atomic orbital, obviously. And in that particular place, the electrons are getting paired. Hope you get this point. Again, I repeat, these are atomic orbitals, pure atomic orbitals. Okay, now they will come closer so that excuse me, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is they will come closer, right? So if they come closer, the electron gets paired. Now, where is the electron present? If you ask me, that these the paired electrons are not anymore in atomic orbitals. They are in some other place. Okay, now that some other place, I am going to call it as hybrid orbitals. Okay, very important term, right? So now I told you that the electrons in the unpaired electrons in the valence shell come together, gets paired, and where do they get paired? It is not an atomic orbitals. These atomic orbitals just combine together to form a new place for the electrons to get paired. That new place is what is called as hybrid orbitals, right? Okay, so that is, so I hope you understand how am I going to this theory of hybridization, like atomic. So what you have to understand is how hybrid orbitals are formed. Two or more atomic orbitals come together, right? They add together to form hybrid orbitals. Okay, in this case, what you have to understand is two s orbitals are combining, one s combining to form some orbital, right? That is called a hybrid orbital, and that is where the electrons are there. The paired electrons are there. Okay, right? Fine. So we understood the concept of what do you mean by a hybrid orbital. And please understand, people, whatever I'm telling you now, it's purely mathematical. Right? It's purely mathematical. It just explains the purpose. It just explains so many things: the strength of the bond, the structure of the molecule, the covalent structure, everything. So many things it explains, right? But we really don't know whether this is what happens in reality or not. But this does it just explains. But it is able to explain all the things which we want to study that is happening. But it's purely mathematical, purely theoretical. Okay, whatever the concept. The theory of hybridization is purely theoretical and mathematical. Yes, go on.
Sir, is overlapping and getting paired same?
Yes, exactly. Coming to the point. Coming.
Sir,
Okay.
in previous class, you had given a question regarding PCl5 and PCl3 are formed, but
Why NCl5 is not formed?
yes, sir,
Oh,
what
yeah,
is
yeah.
that?
Okay. That's actually a nice question. We'll just take a break on this hybrid orbital. We'll answer the question. So the question was PCl5 exists, PCl3 exists, NCl3 also exists, but NCl5 doesn't exist. Right? Anybody care with the answer? Why is it like this? They both belong to the same family, basically. Nitrogen and phosphorus belong to the same family, nitrogen family, but one of them is like this, the other one is different. Any explanation anybody came up with? Anybody saw? Anybody tried?
Right, sir.
Okay, right. So we will try to answer the question here in this theory of hybridization. Yeah, we didn't cover everything for us to answer this particular question. We will answer this. Don't worry. Coming to this. Okay, right. So we understood how a hybrid orbital is formed. A hybrid orbital is formed when two or more pure atomic orbitals which are having unpaired electrons. I can tell atomic orbitals having unpaired electrons. Very important. Not like every atomic orbital will come together to form a hybrid orbital. Okay, atomic orbitals which are having unpaired electrons will come together to form hybrid orbitals. Okay, right. So now what do you mean by adding together is what you have to understand. Okay, we have to understand the point that what do you mean by orbitals coming together or adding together. Okay, so as someone was telling, when I say atomic orbitals combining, right? Atomic orbitals combining. I am talking about the point about a case of something called as an overlap. Okay, there is going to be overlap. They're going to say come together and fuse together, right? Atomic orbitals are going to come and fuse together. That means they overlap, right? And they form a hybrid orbital, right? So you can even tell two atomic orbitals overlap, right, or combined to form a hybrid orbital. Okay, so why I took this particular concept of overlap is because when I say covalent bond, right, this covalent bond can be two types. Okay, we can say three types. Okay, one is what is called as a sigma bond. Okay, the other one is what is called as a pi bond, pi covalent bond, sigma covalent bond. And the other one, last one, is what is called as a coordinate covalent bond. Okay, so now they coordinate bond is a little different. We'll see it separately, but these two, that is your sigma bond and pi bond, comes from this overlap. Okay, now there are two possible ways for the orbitals to overlap. Okay, we'll come to that. But for you to understand overlap, you have to remember the shapes of the orbitals. You should know how an s orbital should look. I know it is spherical, right? And I should know how a p orbital looks. I know it is dumbbell shaped. I know how a d orbital exists as a dumbbell shaped, except for your dz squared, right? So all these things you must know for you to understand how the overlap works and how a sigma bond is formed, how a pi bond is formed. Yes, tell me.
Sir, is dative bond and coordinate covalent bond the same?
Yeah. No, correct. This coordinate bond is also called as a dative bond. Yes, absolutely.
Sir, here we are classifying covalent bond in these three types, but then what about polar covalent bonds and non-polar covalent bonds?
That we'll see when we go. Now I told you, right, when I go for ionic nature in covalent compounds, obviously we saw covalent nature ionic compounds. We'll also see some ionic nature exists in covalent bonds, covalent compounds. At that time we'll try to understand. That is an entire different category of classification itself, right? Here the classification is based on how the overlap is happening. There the classification is based upon whether ionic nature is there or not. Do you get the point?
Okay, charges. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
charges. We'll come to that point. After I finish entirely the covalent ones, we'll see how that also happens. There also, not Fajon's rules, but something else will come. We'll see that later, like how it works out to be. Okay, right. So now I told you, based on how the combination happens, how they fuse, how they overlap the atomic orbitals, right? I can have two types of bonds. Coordinate bond we'll see later. One is what is called a sigma bond. The other one is what is called as pi bonds, right? Okay. So first we'll try to understand what is a sigma bond, right? Now what you have to understand is, people, for sigma bond, right, the overlap should be a head-on overlap. Okay, the overlap should be head-on overlap. Okay, what do you mean by a head-on overlap? Say, for example, I take s orbitals. Okay, I say this is an s orbital. Say there is another s orbital, like just in the case of your hydrogen, 1s and 1s will combine together. Correct. Now those two will overlap. They are going to come together. And if you look at how this thing is formed, it will be something like this. It's head-on collision, right? Two spheres are there. They'll come and collide and fuse, and together they form this kind of structure. Okay, now say this is possible with s and p also. Say there is an s orbital combining. See, like it's better to put the signs, people. I just put the positive sign. Now, what do you mean by this? Actually, I'll put a negative sign. Positive and negative one only should. Anyways, so now this plus and minus does not have anything to do with the charge. Okay, I told you, we will just go back to the atomic structure chapter. I told you all these S, P, D, F are nothing but waves. Is it not? They are nothing but we talk about wave function, how the wave looks, probability, so on and so forth. These are nothing but waves. Okay, this s orbital, p orbitals is nothing but waves. Now, this positive or negative indicates whether the positive side, say if I have a graph like this, the wave is like this, obviously here it is positive, here it is negative, right? They're talking about this is the origin, right? So obviously if it goes above, it's positive, if it goes below, it's negative. All right. So this positive and negative is what is indicated here. right? We do not have to go into the details. So what I'm trying to tell you is this positive and negative is not about charges. It is about whether the graph is above the origin or below the origin. That is what it means here.
Sir,
Okay. And obviously, and plus and minus only will show our track. Yeah, go on. Question.
sir, is this the graph of Schrodinger wave equation?
Yeah, it could be something like that. It depends on which orbital are you talking about, right? Say, for example, if you see 1s orbital with psi and r, the radius, you will see that it is going to be something like this, If you're interested, you can take more, right? Like basically, for every orbital, there is a corresponding shape of the wave which is there. Okay, that is what we're talking about, whether it is above the plane, above the axis or below the axis. Based on that only we give these signs. Okay, I think it is not plus and minus, it is plus and plus. It should be plus and plus should go together, and minus should go together. That's how it should be. It's not
Yes,
plus and
sir.
minus. Okay, it's plus and plus. There is a reason for only y plus and plus. We will see this again when we go for other theories. There's something called as molecular orbital theory. That time you will understand better how is it that the waves can interact and they form. This is just the shape, right? This is just for you to understand the s orbital is spherical, this is spherical. But if you actually look at how the wave pattern, how the waves come together, that'd be an interesting thing. You'll study more about it in physics also. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, could you explain sigma bonds again?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm trying to tell you is that basically for any bond to be formed, I should have overlap of orbitals. That we understood. The hybrid orbitals are formed. How? By two atomic orbitals come together. Okay. Now, how they come together, how they overlap, based on that, I have two types of bonds. One is sigma, other one is pi. Right. So what happens in a sigma bond is that I'm telling you the overlap is happening. How the overlap is happening? It's a head-on overlap like this. They'll come and hit towards their head, clash their heads together. Right. So now with s orbitals, this is the only kind of possibility. There is no other way the overlap can happen. If you can imagine, there is no other way the overlap can happen because it's a full sphere. Right. So only type of overlap possible with s orbital is only this. Okay. I can tell one point if you understand this. If it is s orbitals involved, if in the overlap s orbitals are involved, then definitely it will only be a sigma bond. You can blindly say this. Okay, if you find that there is s orbital involved in a bond, that bond will definitely be a sigma bond because I can have only this kind of overlap. S and S can, or S and P, whatever it is, if it is S and S, or even if you look at S and P, say now this is how the P looks, right? Say this is plus and this is plus. Okay, right. Now if S and P comes together, you will see that I'm going to have, say, this kind of overlap happening. Say the plus and plus will come together to form a bigger plus, right? And smaller, the minus will be smaller, whatever, right? So obviously what you have to understand is this is the only type of interaction. I mean, if I have S, the only type of overlap possible is a head-on overlap. There is no other possible way. Okay, so you saw S and S, you saw S and P, right? Now, I told you that the moment you see S, either in one of them, either both of them are S, or if in one of them are S, definitely it is going to be a sigma bond. You can blindly say that.
Sir, this S can be of different shell, right?
Yeah, different. No, in the sense that, yes, that's a very good question. Very, very good question. See, what you have to understand is if
Sir, it has to be of
they
same
have to be
shell,
from the
sir.
same shell. That's
Yes,
the
sir.
point. Yeah, they have to be from the same shell. Right. So now, why is it like this? Let me tell you. Okay. Say what you have to understand is the orbitals which are involving in the bonding or orbitals involved in the overlap. Right. Now, what you have to understand is they should have similar amount of energy. Right. Or I would say for an efficient overlap, for the overlap to be good, a strong bond, obviously more is the extent of overlap, more will be the strength of the bond. Right. So for them to overlap good, for them to overlap efficiently, the energy difference between the orbitals involved should not be so much. They should have almost similar energy. Only then the overlap is very good. Okay. So now if I take 3s and if I bring it with 4p, the overlap is not that good. Right. But if I have 3s, but if I do it with 3p orbital, yes, even though definitely there is a difference in energy, but it is not much. That's what I done. Similar energy is what I need. Same way I can have 2s and 2p involving this. 4s and 4p can do this. Same way here it is 1s and 1s and only can do. I cannot have 1s and 3s orbital. Possible, right? But it's like, I mean, not so stable. If it is 1s and 1s or 2s and 2s, it is more stronger. The overlap is so say pretty more stronger than if it is going to be 1s and 2s or 1s and 3s. Okay, so now most of the cases, you will see that mostly it will be only what to say. The same shell orbitals only will come together and overlap. Okay, good question. Anyways, but sometimes you can even see it's not like this is the only case. I can have different shells also coming together. We'll see that when it goes to the particular compound. We'll explain
sir,
it later. Yeah.
Sir, then how is NCl3 formed?
Exactly. That's what. It's not like only this is the only case, right? But most of the cases, or I'm telling you, of the overlap, I would say the efficiency of overlap, right, is directly proportional to the difference in energy of orbitals, right? Say now you ask me, right, NCl3 exists. What happens here? Here basically I'll have 2s and 2p orbitals present for N, and here it will be definitely 3p orbitals involved for chlorine, right? But you check this with NF3. NF3 also exists. Here what you really understand is 2s and 2p from nitrogen, and same 2s and 2p from fluorine also. If you check where am I going to have a stronger bond, you will say that NF bond is stronger than an NCl bond due to this reason only. Because the overlap is between say 2p and 3p, but here it is between 2p and 2p, or say 2s and 2s. There the overlap is stronger than in the previous case. Therefore, we say that NF bond is stronger than NCl bond because of the effect of overlap. The more the efficiency, effect of overlap or the efficient overlap is, stronger will be the bond. And how do you decide the efficiency of the overlap? Depending on what is the energy difference between the orbitals involved in bonding. Do you get the point? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Right. So we understood how now a sigma bond is getting formed. So we saw S and S, we saw S and P. I can even have P and P overlapping in a sigma bond. We'll see that. Okay, P and P, how it can have P and P. So this is plus, minus, there's another plus and minus, right? So again, they can come together, head-on overlap. You can see this is the head, head-on overlap. There also it was head-on overlap. Obviously, if S is there, that is the only possibility. But if I have P, two P's, I can have two possibilities. Anyways, now this is one of the possibilities. Say now they'll form something like this: a big plus and a small this side negative and a small this side negative. Okay, so this is where basically the electron will be there in this place. Wherever you see a big space, there only the electron will be there. Two electrons.
Sir,
Yeah.
Sir, can overlapping happen with d orbital?
Yeah. Definitely. It will happen. It can happen. Right.
Sir, so S and D can also overlap?
S and D can overlap. Yes, they can theoretically, but are there any compounds existing for S and D? Yeah, possibility. Yes. S and D can also overlap, but again, very rare chances. Because generally, if it is S orbital and D orbital, already the energy difference is very high. So that's why we say that it is not so frequent to see. But yeah, there are molecules in which it happens. Yes, it happens.
Okay, sir.
Right. So now we saw P and P head-on overlap. So this is my PP sigma bond. Last it was S sigma bond, SP sigma bond we saw, right? So these are the possibilities with sigma bond. Okay, that means if I have a head-on collision, S and S are possible, P and P are possible, and S and P are possible for the overlap. Okay, right. Now, let us see what happens in a pi bond. Okay, right. Now in pi bond, what kind of overlap happens is what is called as your lateral overlap. Okay, lateral overlap. Right. Now remember, S orbitals cannot form pi bonds. Okay, because there's only one way of overlap, and the way of overlap possible is head-on overlap. That is only possible for S orbitals. Right? S orbitals cannot form pi bonds, right? Because why? As I told you, there's only one type of overlapping possible. Okay, So the first type of pi bond which is possible is a PP pi bond. Okay, PP pi bond is how we will see. Okay, say it's like this. Okay, I have a p orbital, another p orbital like this. Okay, right. Now I am going to have an overlap in this position, like say the vertical, and then they're going to overlap. Say what can happen is like this. Say now this can come little closer this side, this can come closer little this side, this can come closer like this, they can come closer like this. So I can have this kind of structure possible. Hope you're able to get what I'm trying to say. Say this plus and plus will overlap, minus and minus will overlap to form this kind of overlap is happening. Say this is what is called as lateral overlap. Say they are like this, they are overlapping like this, like this. Okay, right. Now both the things happening, possibility are less. Both the lobes happening like this. So I would say this is not the correct way. The correct way would be to draw like this. Okay, this is plus and minus and minus. They will overlap like this. Okay, so both the lobes overlapping is a very difficult point because so much repulsion will be there. But one lobe, yes, they can undergo this kind of overlap, lateral overlap. Right? Okay, so this is what is called as your PP pi bond. Okay, now I can have a PD pi bond also. Right, this is the second kind of pi bond which can be possible. Right, so now it's very easy to understand again. Say a p orbital and say a d orbital. Say plus and minus. Right, this is again minus plus whatever. Okay, now again lateral. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, like why can't two p orbitals be vertical?
Means?
Like they're like vertically they are present and they overlap. Like both the lobes.
See, this is how I can, if at all you're not able to explain, understand this, I can explain it like this. Are you able to understand now? What I drew here? The p orbitals are vertical and they come together like this. It's not a head-on overlap. It's like vertical and they come together like this. Are you able to get the point? Yes?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah, I really understand now.
Yes, sir. So that is also a pi bond, right?
Yeah, obviously. This is like, see, this is like just to make you understand, but exactly this is how it happens. Vertically, they'll come and overlap. Head-on overlap is like this. Vertical overlap is like this.
Okay, sir.
Right? This is obviously a pi bond. This is also a p pi bond or PP pi bond, whatever it is. Okay, so now this is a p orbital. This is a d orbital. Again, they can come together like this. Say plus, minus, again plus. Please bear with my drawing, guys. Okay, what you have to understand is this lobe and this lobe is undergoing an overlap like this. I can even have this and this together overlap also. This negative and this negative again can come together. Okay, so this is what is called as your P, or it's sometimes called as P pi D pi bond. Here it is called as P pi bond. Okay, basically what orbitals are involving, very simple. Okay, so what you have to understand is, people, now the moment when I have d orbitals, okay, the moment I have d orbitals, I can tell for sure they will have only pi bond, right? Pi bond only. Okay, yeah, as you asked me, if at all I have s and d orbitals combining, say something like this. Okay, something like this, if I have, right, this is positive. Yeah, theoretically speaking, it is possible, but if I have to look into compounds which are forming, the compound forming are very rare, very rare compounds. Okay, this is not a good thing. This is not a favorable condition for an overlap. To a sigma overlap is impossible. Like even if it's there, it is going to be a very inefficient overlap. Okay, so generally we speak only about, if I talk about sigma bond, we speak about SS, we speak about SP, and we speak about PP. Okay, and when I go for pi bond, we speak about PP and PD, and again I can even have d pi. Yes, that is also possible. Third possibility is, 1 second, is that possibility is d pi. Yes, tell me.
Sir, under PP overlapping,
PP overlapping.
Is it px?
Okay. Now what you have to understand is this is the axis. Okay, this is the axis. Okay, actually that's a very good question. Now look at this, people. Like, say now I have px, py, and pz. Okay, now say 2 carbon atoms are there. Okay, I have 2 carbon atoms, right? Say now carbon atoms, say now one, obviously the first, remember always this point, the first bond is always a sigma bond. Okay, the first bond which forms, if I have only one bond, that is definitely a sigma bond. If you have more than one bond, then only the possibility of pi bond comes. Okay, now why is it like this? If you ask me, what you have to understand is a sigma bond is stronger than a pi bond because there is better overlap. Obviously, if I can have head-on overlap, the effectiveness of overlap is more compared to a lateral overlap. Okay, so always a sigma bond is the first one which is getting formed because that is the strongest. The head-on overlap will have the maximum efficiency, right? So we have better overlap. So generally we say that it is the first bond, if it is going to get formed, it is always a sigma bond. That is for sure, right? Second bond, third bond are the kind of, those are going to be pi bonds. Okay, so anyways, what I'm trying to tell you is, say now assume that the internuclear axis, right? On what axis are they going to meet? It depends, right? I mean, depending on that only you can tell which is going to form sigma bond and which two are going to form pi bonds. Okay, that you must define first. Generally, we say that the internuclear axis is z-axis. Okay, the internuclear axis is z-axis. Okay, right. So if it is z-axis, what I understand is the pz orbital only will be pointing along the x-axis. Hope you remember the shapes. Okay, the pz orbital only will be pointing along the z-axis. Other two, px will be pointing along x-axis, py will be pointing along y-axis. Is it not? So if I consider, you can see there is no restriction that you have to consider only z-axis. You can consider anything. But generally, what we do is we consider z-axis as the internuclear axis. Okay, right. So what happens now? You will have another this pz of this carbon comes, and they will come together to make a sigma bond. First bond is done. Okay, right. Right. Now I'm trying to talk about the case where I have a C triple bond C. Okay, we know alkyne exists. Alkyne exists. There's a triple bond between carbon and carbon. Right. Say one bond we understood. Sigma bond is done. Right. The pz orbitals will come together, head-on overlap, sigma bond. Okay. Right. Now what you understand is there is, say, one more pi bond, one more p orbital here and here. Say this is my y, py, this is my py. Okay. Now, obviously what you have to understand is there is no possibility that this py and this py can come together on head-on overlap. Impossible, right? Because already there is this s orbital, pz orbital overlapping in the head-on way. Right. So what you have to understand is maximum in any molecule, maximum only one sigma bond. This is a very good point to understand. Any molecule, any covalent compound, I told you that the first bond is always sigma bond, and that is the only possible sigma bond. Other than that, no more sigma bonds are possible. Once you form one sigma bond, 2 sigma bonds, 3 sigma bonds are not possible. After that, how many ever bonds you form, all of them are going to be pi bonds. I hope I'm clearing. I hope you're very, very clear in this point. The first bond is always sigma bond, and maximum only one sigma bond is possible. That means what? If I can have a double bond or a triple bond, the second or third bond will only be a pi bond. Sigma bond is not possible because there's only one sigma bond possible. I hope this point enters into your mind and get fixed there. Okay.
So,
Yeah,
so in C triple bond, CC triple bond, one bond will be sigma and the other two will be pi.
Exactly. That is what you need to understand, right? So in this case, if it is C triple bond C, only one sigma bond, as I told you, any molecule for that matter. Other than that, remaining how many other bonds you have, that many pi bonds. So in this case, I will have 2 pi bonds. Okay, say for example, if I take O2 molecule, okay, if I take O2 molecule, right, I know O double bond O is there. So what is the number of sigma bond and pi bond here?
1.
One sigma bond and one pi bond. Very simple, right? Say now if I ask you this question, okay, this is basically benzene C6H6. Okay, here on all I have hydrogen. Okay, each corner basically is a carbon. Okay, each corner you see is a carbon. Right, this is a double bond, and a double bond. Okay, so what I want you to do is count the number of sigma bonds and pi bonds in this molecule. Tell me how many sigma bonds and how many pi bonds in this molecule C6H6.
Sir, even here only one sigma bond.
No, so many are there, right? Sigma bonds. Say, for example, between carbon number 1 and carbon number 2, there is sigma bond. Between carbon number 2 and carbon number 3, another one. 3 and 4, 4 and 5, 5 and 6, 6 and 1. That means that here itself I have 5 sigma bonds. Other than that, I have CH sigma bonds also. Right? So hope you are able to understand, people, what I'm trying to say. Right? Anyways, you do it. Tell me how many sigma bonds and how many pi bonds totally in this molecule. Total.
Sir, is it 5 sigma bond?
5 sigma bonds and how many pi bonds?
7.
7 pi bonds. Okay, fine. So
3
I
pi
think
bonds
correct. So 3 pi bonds is correct answer. Yes, absolutely.
and 12 sigma bonds.
12 sigma bonds. I think it's correct. Let me check it out. Okay, fine, people. Now what I'll do is I will just number the carbon atoms. First carbon, second carbon, third carbon, fourth carbon, fifth carbon, sixth carbon. Okay, and I have 6 hydrogens also, right? Let me mark that also. First hydrogen, second hydrogen, third hydrogen, fourth hydrogen, fifth hydrogen, sixth hydrogen. Okay, now what you have to understand is, people, I have two bonds here. One can be CH bond, like sigma or pi, we don't know, right? And I can have CC bond against sigma or pi, I don't know. Okay, right. Now, CH, you see, there is only one bond between each of the carbon and hydrogen. There is only one bond. And I told you, if there is only one bond, that is sigma bond, right? So how many CH bonds are there like that? 1, 2, 3, between C1, H1, C2, H2, C3, H3, C4, H4, C5, H5, and C6, H6, right? So can I say I have 6 CH bonds, and obviously all of them are sigma bonds only because they are all single bonds. I hope I made the point very clear.
Sir,
Yeah, tell me.
sir, but one carbon atom can only have one sigma bond with any.
No. What you have to understand, now I'm talking about, say, I told you in this C triple bond C, there is 1 sigma and 2 pi, right? Now, this kind of things you should see between 2 atoms, right? Carbon atom, hydrogen atom, how many bonds are there in between that? Carbon atom, how many bonds are there in between that? It is not about the valency here. You don't have to worry about the valency here. Take 2 atoms at a time. CH means CH, you take that. See how many bonds are there. If there's only one bond, definitely there's a sigma bond. Now you take CC. Okay, if you find that that particular CC has 2 bonds, obviously one is sigma, one is pi. Do you get the point?
Sir, then the carbon atom in the middle of C and another H is having 2 sigma bonds.
So say if I take carbon number 1 and carbon number 2, okay, tell me between
yes, sir.
carbon
so
number
carbon number between carbon number 1 and hydrogen 1, there is one sigma bond, and between carbon atom 1 and carbon atom 2, there is another sigma bond.
No. What I'm understanding, what I trying to tell is, in between this carbon 1 and carbon 2, if I have another carbon,
there is one sigma bond.
Yeah, there is one sigma
between
bond.
Carbon 1 and hydrogen 1, there is another sigma bond.
Exactly, correct. Exactly, correct.
So that carbon 1 is having 2 sigma bonds. That is what I mean.
Exactly. Carbon 1 is having 2 sigma bonds, but you should not tell that carbon 1 is having 2 sigma bonds. Carbon 1 is having one CH sigma bond, one CC sigma bond. Those two are different. It's not like 2 sigma bonds are there between the same atom. No, that is not possible. Hope you're able to get the point. Yes?
Okay, sir. Got it.
Right?
Sir?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Is there any question somebody has?
Sir, like should it be done like this? For example, the total number of bonds in this C6H6 is 15,
Hmm.
and there are 3 double bonds. So
Okay.
3 pi bonds.
Yeah, like that we can say.
And
Yes.
then we can subtract it with the total
Yeah,
number.
yeah. You can do anywhere you want, but the law, but the theory you have to understand. What is the theory? So now we understood that CH bond. First, there are two types of bonds which are there. Okay, one is CH bond, the other one is CC bond. And what I understand from all of this is that in the CH bond, in all the CH bond, all of them are single bonds. There is only one bond between carbon and hydrogen, one bond between carbon and hydrogen, right? And as I told you, if I have only one bond, that is obviously going to be a sigma bond. Okay, so how many CH bonds I have? 6 CH bonds I have, and all of them are sigma. Okay, right, fine.
Sir,
Yeah.
so the sigma bond between carbon 1 and carbon 2 is different from that between carbon 1 and carbon 6?
Yes, obviously it is different. It's the C1, C2, that is C1, C6, different bond only. Yes.
Okay, sir.
Right? Okay, right. So now we'll check about CC bond now. Now CC bond, say you understand first, like forget about the bonds that are inside, right? Let me check here. So now if I check how many bonds I have between C1, C2, right? C1, C2, there is actually this bond and there is another bond here. Is it not? Between C1 and C2, there are two bonds, right? One sigma, obviously the first bond is always sigma. Obviously, if there is another bond, that is always going to be a pi bond. So between C1 and C2, I have one sigma and one pi. Okay, now let me check C2 and C3, C2 and C3 now. C2 and C3, you see there is only one bond. There is no bond here. There is only one bond. So obviously that is going to be a sigma bond. If there's only one bond, sigma bond, very simple. Okay, now let me go to C3 and C4. Right? If I check C3 and C4, I understand there is one bond here and there is second bond here. Two bonds are there. So obviously what I understand, one sigma, one pi. Okay, right. Now going from C4 and C5, between C4 and C5, what happened? There is only one bond. You can see there's no bond here. There is only one bond here, right? So I can easily tell one sigma, right? Moving on to C5 and C6, between C5 and C6, what do you understand? There is one bond here, there is another bond here. So obviously I can say that one sigma and one pi. And at last, obviously you have connection between C6 and C1. C6 and C1, what I understand, there is only one bond here, there is no other bond. So that bond obviously has to be sigma bond, one sigma bond. Okay, right, fine. Now it's very easy for us to calculate how many sigma and how many pi we have. Now for C6, I have 6 here plus 6, here plus 1, here 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 12 sigma bonds. Right? I'll check how many pi bonds I have. 1, 2, and 3. So I have 3 pi bonds. Okay, people, understood? Right? How we understand, how we got 12 sigma and 3 pi here. Easily understood. Check individual two atoms at a time. You take and check how many bonds it has. First bond is always sigma. Other than that, how many other bonds you have between those two atoms alone, that becomes a pi bond. Okay, right. So let me give you another example like this. Right. Say first I want to know, you draw the Lewis dot structure for HCl. Okay, first is draw the Lewis structure, all obviously along with the lone pairs and all, right? Then from the Lewis structure, tell me how many sigma and how many pi the molecule has. Go for it.
So 2 sigma and 2 pi.
Okay, correct. Anyways, draw the Lewis dot structure and check whether you're getting the same thing.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Why didn't you include a delta bond in the classification?
Delta bond?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by delta bond?
Sir,
There is
overlapping of d orbital.
exactly. That's what overlapping of d orbital is very, very how to say. We don't even study them in BSc. Okay, we study them in little higher levels of chemistry. You don't need that. If you're interested, please Google it. You can study obviously more in internet, and we can discuss anyway if at all you have any doubts. Okay, that is a little more complex. How the delta bond is formed and all, right?
2
So, yeah.
sigma 2 pi.
Yeah, 2 sigma and 2 pi you must be getting. Okay, right, fine. So if you are, let me draw the Lewis dot structure first. Hydrogen has only 1 electron in the valence shell. Carbon had 4 electrons in the valence shell. Let me write it like this. Okay, carbon had 4 valence electrons, and nitrogen has 5 valence electrons. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, fine. Right now, let me complete hydrogen first. Hydrogen require 1 more electron to satisfy its octet. Sorry, duplet. So done. Right now, nitrogen will be complete. Nitrogen has already 5 valence electrons. It requires 3 more electrons to satisfy its octet. So it will take these 3 electrons now. Right now, you can easily make the bonds. One pair shared between carbon and hydrogen. So 1 bond. Right now, there are 3 pairs shared between carbon and nitrogen. So 3 bonds. Now, if I draw it properly now, I will have H, single bond, C, triple bond, N, and N has a lone pair on this. This is the exact Lewis structure. Or this is the Lewis dot structure. This is just the skeleton structure. Okay, right. Now, obviously, now you take 2 atoms at a time, right? There are 3 atoms here. Take 2 atoms at a time. So let me take first CH, right? Or HC, whatever it is. Now, between H and C, there is only 1 bond here. You see, obviously, 1 sigma, right? Now, the other pair we can take is C and N. You cannot take CH, sorry. You cannot take NH because NH bond doesn't even exist in this molecule. There is no bond between nitrogen and hydrogen here. So this you should not take. Okay, I have 2 things. One is CH, the other one is CN. Right. Okay. Now what I understand is between this carbon and nitrogen, I have 3 bonds. Right. As I told you, the first bond is always 1 sigma. So 1 sigma gone. So obviously the other 2 remaining will be pi bonds. Okay. So how many sigma bonds totally? 1 here, 1 here. Totally 2 sigma bonds and 2 pi bonds are the answer to this question. Okay, guys. Now any structure given to you, you must be able to tell how many pi bonds and how many sigma bonds I have in this molecule. Very, very easy. Very, very easy. You must take 2 atoms at a time, right? And check how many bonds are there in between them. Only 1 bond means no problem, sigma bond. Now, if I have multiple bonds, 1 sigma, rest all are pi. Very simple. Very, very simple. Okay, right? Fine. Any questions anybody has? What is the time I need to know? Okay, we have 20 more minutes. Okay, everybody understood, people? What is sigma? What is pi? The extent of overlap. Why is there is only one? Okay, now we didn't come to the point of why there can only be there is only 1 sigma. Right? Yeah, more than 1 sigma. Why is it not possible? I was explaining you that, but now like we understood what is sigma and pi and how to calculate how many sigma and how many pi's we have. Right? Okay, so let me go back to the point. Let me where I started. Yeah, this is where I started. Right. So now I say I have this is carbon atom and another carbon atom. Right. Now carbon atom, obviously, I have px, py, and pz. Right. Now what you have to understand is first I have to decide what is my internuclear axis. You have all 3 choices, x, y, z. Right. And now generally we take z as the internuclear axis. So in this case, I'm taking z as the internuclear axis. Okay, so now when I take pz orbital, obviously pz orbital will be oriented along the z-axis. This is my z-axis, right? Along the z-axis, I'll have the lobes. So obviously pz and pz will come together, make a sigma bond. So I will say it is a pz sigma bond. Okay, done. Right. Now once this happens, now see, look at this. This is my okay, say this is okay. This is my z. Hope you're looking at my video. Okay, this is my z. Okay, now say obviously the z. Okay, this is my px, py, and pz. You can hope you understand. All of them are mutually perpendicular, right? This is x-axis, or assume this is z-axis, this is y-axis, mutually perpendicular. Okay, here also I have the same thing, right? So now the two z came together head-on overlap. Okay, the two z came together head-on overlap. Now, please understand that there cannot be any more head-on overlap, impossible, because this is already overlap done. Okay, so now hope you're able to understand why there can only be one sigma bond, right? Say for example, if I have taken, say, the same thing, right, same thing with your x-axis, again you see that there's a bottom two fingers here also. Where after this is formed, I cannot have any more head-on overlap. They'll be like this only. So that is why we say first bond is always sigma. The reason is there is better overlap. Okay, now more than one sigma bond, why is it not possible? You can understand the orientation itself. One sigma bond, I cannot have any more head-on overlap between any of the orbitals for that matter.
Sir, if there are only px and py orbitals, then there can be two, no sigma bonds, right?
That case will never arise, right? Because if I want to make a sigma bond and say if I have only px, right, the other atom should contain a px. Then only bond formation first of all can happen. Straight without forming a sigma bond, I cannot directly go to a pi bond. Impossible. No. That kind of situation also will never exist. We will never come across those kind of situations in your life, in your chemistry life, if you say. Okay, don't worry about that. Right. Okay, so everybody understood why is there only one sigma bond, because once one head-on overlap happens, there is no possibility of other head-on overlaps. The other, whatever be the overlaps can happen, say if I do like this, that will be a better picture. Now is there, now say this is my px, my index finger is my px. Now that can undergo an head-on, like say a lateral overlap, this is my lateral overlap. And again, these two, my thumbs, again, they say this is my py, they can undergo head-on over, lateral overlap, right? So this one, the top one is my pi bond, the bottom one is my pi bond, but this, what is there in between, is going to be a sigma bond.
Sir?
Okay, yeah, tell me.
Sir, so here we have taken internuclear axis as PZ.
Exactly.
So PZ and PZ will form an sigma bond, whereas PY and PY will form an pi bond.
Exactly, correct.
And what about PX and PX? Even that will form pi bond.
Exactly, that's what I showed you, right? This is my PZ. Once it forms PZ, now this is my PX, assuming lateral overlap, done. There is one more bottom, lateral overlap, right? So this is PZ over head-on overlap, one lateral overlap, PX, another lateral overlap, PY. Done.
Okay, sir.
Understood, right? So this is my only head-on overlap. Other two are lateral overlaps only. They are not coming together like this or like this.
Sir?
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, px and py can never overlap, right?
No, how it will overlap? I want head-on collision, right? Say px will be pointing like this, okay, and say pz will be mutually perpendicular like this. How will they undergo head-on overlap? Are you able to get the point? Okay, it's all about the orientation. That is why I told you the shapes of the orbitals and their directions towards which axis they have is very, very important, because now you understand, depending on what is the orientation along which axis, I will decide whether that is going to be a sigma bond or a pi bond. Okay, or whether a sigma bond first bond is possible or not. Obviously, those things can be decided by this, right? Okay, fine. So now, so we understood why only one sigma. First bond is always sigma, and after that, whatever forms is going to be a pi bond. So we understood why first bond is a sigma bond, and there can only be one sigma bond. Why? All that we understood. Okay, right? And we understood the concept of overlap. What is the time? Okay, we have time. So we'll move on to the hybridization part. So we started all this to understand how theory of hybridization works. So I told in valence bond theory, what they said, there are going to be atomic orbitals, right? And these valence atomic orbitals are going to have unpaired electrons. Okay, now those two unpaired electrons having orbitals will come together, make a hybrid orbital, and in that hybrid orbital, the electrons are paired. Hope you're all getting this point.
Sir?
Again, I repeat.
Sir, can you repeat?
Sure. I'll repeat it again. Look at this. Again, I'll give you the example. H2 molecule is there. Hydrogen, hydrogen. I have two atomic orbitals, 1s, 1s, having unpaired electrons. Okay. Now, what valence bond theory says? I should have unpaired electrons in the valence orbital, right? And how a covalent bond is formed when they both come together, make a hybrid orbital. This was not told. The hybrid orbital statement was not told by valence bond theory, but for your understanding, I'm telling. So these orbitals having unpaired electrons will come together to make a hybrid orbital. And in this hybrid orbital, these two electrons get paired, and that is how a covalent bond gets formed. That is what is told by your valence bond theory. It is understood now, Kana, Homer asked.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay, so atomic orbital should have unpaired electrons. The unpaired electron will get paired. Where will they get paired? In hybrid orbital. How a hybrid orbital is formed? When two atomic orbitals come closer and overlap, or say they come together, they say that the hybrid orbital is formed, and in that hybrid orbital, only the paired electrons are there. This is where a molecule is getting formed. From an atom to a molecule transition, this is how it happens.
Sir,
Okay.
so unpaired electron from the orbitals come together and they form the hybrid orbital, and then in that hybrid orbital they form the paired electron.
Exactly.
Okay,
Correct.
sir.
Correct. And once they get paired, and that's it, the bond is formed. Say the covalent bond is formed.
Okay, sir, got it.
Sir,
Yeah, tell me.
sir, could you explain the number of nodal planes for all those orientation?
Number of nodal planes. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So okay. So for Px, Py, and all Pz,
Sir, can you
basically.
start from SS?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So if I or first we'll talk about this number of radial and angular nodes. Right. So do you remember the shortcut? How number of radial nodes, number of angular nodes? Number of radial nodes is L, I guess. Correct? Is the
Sir,
number of radial nodes L? Or
I
number
guess
of angular nodes L?
Angular is L
Okay. Number of angular
and
nodes is
radius
L.
is N
N,
minus L
N
minus.
minus L minus 1. Okay. Right. Okay. Fine. Now, say if I take S orbital. Now I know the shape looks like this. I have all the three axes. Okay. This is X, Y, and Z, or whatever X, Y, Z, however you want to keep it. Okay. Right. So now this is the S orbital. Generally, this one S doesn't have any nodes. Fully, it's there. In every place, the electron is present. Right. This is for 1s. Right. But if you go for 2s, you will see that the shape is something like this. Okay. So obviously, in this place, fully electron is present. But in this place, right, the electron is not present. Okay. So now this is what is called as your radial node. Okay. This is what is called as your radial node. Okay. But if I go to P, say I take Px or Py or Pz, anything for that matter, say this is Py if I take, this is how it exists, right? Now there is no radial node here because everything is okay, but at the origin, you will find that there is going to be an angular node, right? At the origin, you will find that there is going to be a angular node, right? This happens for Px, Py, and Pz, all of them. Okay, now if I take dxy, yz, and zx, they will have, say, shape, I think it's in between the axis, right? So it will be even for d x squared minus y squared, right? Whatever, it has 4 lobes. That's what you have to understand. Say something like this. Please bear with my handwriting. Please bear with my drawing. So there are 4 lobes, right? So again, you will see that at the origin only there will be a angular node. Okay. Now, if I go for dz squared alone, there will be a small difference there. This is my z-axis. Right, and I'm surrounding this, I'm going to have a ring. Okay, so obviously at the center, I do have an angular node, right? But if you look at the circle again, in that case, I'm going to have a radial node. So this is how the nodes are present in all the orbitals.
Sir, so in dz squared, it is one angular node and one radial.
Correct. In dz squared, I have one angular node, and see, this is all for 3D. Okay, 4D will have an entirely different shape. Again, we don't have to go into the details of that. Don't worry about it.
So Sir, so in dx square hyphen y square, there is no radial node.
No, there's no radial node. There's only one angular node. Okay, right? Fine.
Sir,
So
can you explain for S again? I didn't
Yeah.
understand.
S is very simple. This one has no node. Okay, one has completely everywhere, even at the origin, everywhere it is completely shaded. Everywhere electron can be present. Okay, but if you check, say 2s, right? 1s is like the shape is like this, but 2s shape is like this, little like a ring structure. Like there's a little kind of ring structure there. Okay, so inside the inner circle or inner sphere, say I'll have the electron cloud is there, but in between these two, there is no electron present. So this becomes a radial node. Radial node is something like a circular in shape, and an angular node is generally a point shape, like point shaped node is what is called an angular node. That's what happens in S. Okay. 3s will again have a different thing. 3s will be like this. Okay, so now what you understand is here there is one node and here there is one node. So in this case, I will have two radial nodes for 3s.
Sir, are these and nodal planes the same?
No. See, the nodes, right? Remember that nodes can be a point, it can be a line, or it can be a plane, entire plane itself, right? So now if you ask me for px, this point to what I said is a pointal node. Say node is a point, but this has two nodal planes, or I would say, yeah, two nodal planes. Two nodal planes. Py will have, that is my xy plane, right? Sorry, not xy plane, xz plane. Not two nodal planes, only one nodal plane. Okay, xz plane. Okay, in xz plane, basically py will not have anything. It will be there in xy. It will be there in xy and zy. In these planes, lobes will be present. Okay, in these planes, but in xz plane, there will not be any orbital present. There will not be an electron present. So that becomes a nodal plane. So like that formula which we saw here, n minus l minus 1 and l, these are for points, nodal points. Nodal planes, you have to imagine and find it out. What is it like this? Okay, say for example, in case I take dxy, okay, so obviously I'm going to have a nodal plane in yz plane, because in xy it will be there, yz it will be there, xz it will be there, but in yz completely empty, dxy. Right now, another thing also I can tell, what you understand is this is px, or this is py, right? Now I can tell that x-axis and y-axis, not y-axis, z-axis, right, are nodal lines for this py. Because along this, say this is my x-axis, right? There is nothing on the x-axis basically for your py. Right, so yeah, the nodal points, nodal planes, and nodal lines are different. Hope you're able to understand the difference here. Now, whatever we understood, now the points we understood along with the formulas, but nodal lines and nodal planes will be different for different orbitals. Okay, understood? Yes.
Yes, sir. So for S and S orbital, the nodal plane will be 1.
For S orbital, nodal plane is 0. Now all the plane it is there. XY is there, YZ is there, ZX it is there, S orbital. 3D shape, full sphere. There is no nodal plane. There is only a nodal point. That only radial. That is not a point actually. Again, that's a plane only. That radial plane, in that plane alone, that circular plane alone, the electron cannot be found. Yes. Okay. Okay, I hope everything is fine. Right, what is the time? Yeah, I think we'll stop with this for today. Okay, so we'll continue with this hybrid orbitals, the concept of hybrid orbitals in little more depth, not little more depth, like say full depth, we are going to see in the next class. What are the different hybrid orbitals possible, and with that, how a sigma bond, how a pi bond, coordinate bond, the strength of the bond, the structure, shape, geometry, bond angles, everything we'll see tomorrow's class. Tomorrow's class is going to be very, very interesting. Tell your friends also who missed it. Okay, you will get a lot of insights about chemical compounds from from tomorrow's class, tomorrow's and the next class. You will actually get a lot of insight. Okay. Is there any other questions? Anybody wants me to answer?
Sir, what is hydration energy?
Hydrogen energy, we'll come back to that. Hydrogen energy, I have to teach you. First, I have to teach you what is hydrogen bonding in the secondary types of bonds. Then I will tell you what is hydrogen energy. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions anybody has?
Tomorrow is it a 2-hour session?
Tomorrow is it a 2-hour session? Tomorrow, what time is the class? Tomorrow is the class from 9:30, right?
11:30 to 1.
Oh, it's 11:40. Oh, no. 11:30 to 1. Okay. Are you guys okay? Can we have tomorrow 2 hours class? Can you plan accordingly?
Yes, sir.
Can you finish at
Yes,
1:30? 1:45 will complete basically. 1:45 would be 15 minutes break included. Okay, will that be okay, guys? For everybody, I can inform the management, right? Excellent people, I can inform, right? Can I confirm it
Yes.
for everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, people, great. So tomorrow you have a 2 hours class. So 11:30 to 1:30 will be the timing. In between, we'll have 15 minutes break. Okay, fine. Thank you so much, people. We'll meet again tomorrow.
Sir, the hybridization structure alone, can you teach tomorrow? Can you teach it more into depth, sir? Because I didn't
We are-
understand it.
we
in
are
school
doing that.
that
We
much.
are doing We are doing that. Do not worry. It is just an introduction. Like, do you understand sigma and pi bonds today? Did you understand that point?
Yeah, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's enough. That's enough. Don't worry about hybridization. We'll come back to that tomorrow in depth. From starting to till depth, we'll see. Don't worry about it. Today's class motto is you must understand sigma bonds, pi bonds, how many sigma, how many pi, how they are formed. That if you understand, I'm happy. That is more than enough. Okay.
Sir,
Yes,
can
sir,
we
clear and
recapitulate about the radial nodes and angular?
Radial nodes, angular nodes, you have a problem.
Yes, sir. I kind of didn't understand.
Sure, that also we'll see tomorrow's class. Maybe
Okay.
I'll spend 5 minutes, but like see, questions and all won't come, but with respect to your nodes, but you can know the formula. Shortcut, you remember. Number of angular nodes is L, number of radial nodes is N minus L minus 1. That you understand. I'll tell you what is radial and angular. Very simple. That I'll tell you. Okay. Anybody has any other queries? Any other questions? Okay. Fine then. Thank you. Thank you so much, people. We'll meet tomorrow.
Thank you.
Class.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.